So as we set ourselves up for our practice today, we may start in a kneeling seat. The invitation is always to find a seat that will work for you. Maybe it's cross-legged, maybe it's sitting in a chair. If you have a yoga block, it could even be a couple yoga blocks that you stack. You might sit on the block to find that kneeling position. If you have a couple of additional blocks, and probably not, we might have one more, we might just tuck it off to the right on the diagonal for now. So we may just wiggle ourselves back into that kneeling seat. And I'm going to sit sideways for a moment. And we'll let our hands rest, palms face down, in this rooting, grounding position in the lap. Eyes resting. Giving ourselves a few moments to arrive, to find our seat, to make any adjustments needed. Again, we might decide we want to go a little higher. Maybe we're plugging in 2 blocks, sitting up higher. If you're using a blanket, you may double it up. Sometimes it's about those ankles. So if you'd like to roll up towels or a blanket and put them underneath the tops of the ankles, please do. We'll just check in with the location of the sits bones. We might find a little bit of a pelvic rock where we're rocking back kind of low rider style. So it feels like your sits bones have moved forward. And then go the other way. So we're rocking forward and it might feel like the belly button is dumping or pouring down. So we might just kind of rock a little forward, a little back, and then try to find a spot right in the middle where it feels like we're long from hip bones to armpits, and the shoulders may be stacking right over those sits bones. Eyes at rest. Observing the breath. We may sigh, noticing perhaps the cool of the inhale through the nostrils, and the sound of the exhale as it departs the body. We may take a few more breaths in that manner, sighing it out audibly. And if and when you feel ready, perhaps we're both inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the nose. We may float the palms to face upwards, bringing movement into the fingers, movement into the wrists, trade wrist circles, and then bring movement into the elbows while we continue to circle the wrists. Trade direction with the elbow rotations and the wrists. And we'll bring the palms together in front of the heart. Weave the fingers together and just notice which thumb you've slid on top. Let's press the palms forward and perhaps we reach the arms overhead. Let the elbows bend and glide to one side. So we're starting to draw circles overhead or behind our head. And let's pause and draw those circles in the second direction. Let's reach those arms up. Let the fingers separate as the fingertips move back down towards the ground. Invite the shoulders forward, up, back, and down. And then shoulders backwards, up, forward, and down. Spinning palms forward, bringing movement into the fingers. Turn the chin over to one side. Now, it doesn't matter which, we'll do both. And we might find a little nod of the head. We might not. We might just prefer to find stillness through the head. Let the fingers mobilize. And then gather back in towards center, towards a home position. And then let the arms open wide. Turn the head in the second direction, and we may find a little nod of the head. It could be a yes nod or no nod. It could be a creative nod. And then gather the hands back in. Let's open just one arm out to the side. Again, it doesn't matter which, we'll do both. Spin the palm to face up and cluster the fingers together, flexing the wrist. And we might just open and close that, and then hold that flexed position. Start to turn the chin to center. We might find a little nod. Yep, that's enough. That's plenty. We might pivot those clustered fingertips forward. Maybe not. We might turn the chin in the opposite direction, tuck the chin down. You may prefer to nod. We might tilt the head back. Ooh, and then just gather that arm back in. And we'll try that same thing on the second side. Now, you don't have to turn around. I'm just turning around because you can only see one arm. And we'll let that other arm reach up. And we'll look in that direction. Maybe the palm faces up. If this is your dominant side, maybe it's very different. Maybe just extending the arm is a lot. We may be clustering the fingers and flexing the wrist. We might go back and forth a few times. We may cluster hold. Return the chin to center. And again, maybe that's enough. You can always release, revisit. Maybe we take the chin to the opposite shoulder with a little head nod, a chin tuck. We may lean the head back. And then gathering back in towards midline. Now, we may try that both at the same time. So both arms out, fingers could cluster up or forward. We might angle the arms down a little more, pick a side, bring the head to that side, with or without nods or chin circles. We may lean the head back. We may tilt the chin down, trace to the other side. If you're having a little too much fun, feel free to take a little rest. And when you've had all the fun you want to, a little on each side, gather it back in. So just take a moment. Maybe we shift through the shoulders, the arms, and just see how things feel. Rubbing those hands together, we may take the fingers to the neck and give ourselves a little neck massage. This could be the side of the neck. It may be the back of the neck. It may be the base of the skull. Perhaps we tip backwards, self-massaging base of the skull. And we'll release that. Circle both arms high. And as we exhale, rotating, twisting towards the right. So maybe we have that prop that we're letting the backhand rest on. Chin could travel to the right. It doesn't have to. We can certainly keep the chin right over center of the chest. And if we just have the one prop, take it with you. We'll inhale back to center and exhale, rotating, twisting to second side. Now let's inhale, take the prop with you. We'll find your way back to center and just deposit your prop off to the right. And if you have a very hard floor, you might like to grab a little knee padding and tuck it underneath your knees. Let's roll on forward, planting the hands, and slide that right foot back. So we're pitching back through that right heel. Now socks, unless you have the traction socks, tend to be a little slippery. So we might want to eliminate socks. I know it's a little cooler today. Pitching back through that heel. Chin tucking in towards chest. We have a little rounding in the back. And let's release that right leg down. And we'll do the same thing on the second side. So we'll slide that left heel back, chin tucking, maybe a little head nod, low calf muscles. And we'll come back to that kneeling position and focus now more on the hands. So we'll keep the left hand planted and the right fingers might turn towards 3 o'clock. We might angle them towards 4, 5, or even 6 o'clock, pointing back at the knee. And perhaps we tuck the toes under at the same time and begin to sit the hips towards the heels as the palm of the right hand rises. We'll shift it back to center. And we may just flex that right hand. We may flex the right hand and bring the back of the hand down to the ground, possibly mobilizing the fingers as well. So let's plant the right hand, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. So second hand, the left fingers may turn towards 9. Maybe we move all the way around towards 6. And perhaps we tuck the toes and start to sit back, peeling the heel of the hand off the ground. The thumb may rise. And let's release that, and we'll flex the back of the hand, maybe just possibly bringing the back of the hand to the floor. And the fingers might find a little bit of movement. And let's release the palm down to the ground, rounding the back, finding our way into a cat pose, maybe a little glide of the ribs side to side. And then move the other way into a cow pose. Consider letting the ribs glide to one side, round the back like you're inside the nearly empty mustard jar. And we're trying to scrape every last drop of mustard out with our ribs. The belly, the side ribs, the back ribs, the second side. And let's pause and circle now in that second direction. Let's bring ourselves back to center. Find that kneeling seat. We might locate our block, sitting up on the block. We've got a little space between the ankles, and you might have your block over on the right side. Inhale, let the arms rise, and as we exhale, find that twist over to the right, possibly moving that right hand back a little bit more. We may press down into the block and let the hips rise. Creating just a little side bend, a little rotation over to the right. We'll bring it back to center. Relocate the block over to the left. We want to have a secure block, maybe your hands on the ground. We'll press down into the prop. The hips may rise, sweeping that right arm perhaps over towards the left. And we'll bring it back down. So give yourself a moment. Think about coming forward again to hands and knees. So I'm going to pivot around again. Slide that right leg back, and we may float the right leg up. Take that knee out to the side, and then pull the knee into the chest. The back is rounded. Keep the knee bent as the toes rise. Knee moves out towards the right. Round the back. The knee rises. Let's go out to the side one more time, pull it in, and this time reverse direction. So just smooth out those circles, 3 rotations, and then land the shin. So second side, reach the left leg back, let the leg float up, bend the knee out to the left. Pull the thigh in, rounding the back, so it's cat pose. Let the foot rise, knee goes wide. Smooth it out. So 3 rotations, each direction, reverse, make sure you do both. And let's land, dropping it back into a child's pose. So you might bring your forehead down to the ground. I'm going to go for a block. I'm hoping it's less muffled. And if your forehead does not come to the ground, feel free to use a prop, support the breath. Your arms might be fully extended. Feel free to keep bend in elbows. Palms could face up or down. Finding fullness of breath and body. And then let's take a moment to shift forward, tuck the toes under, and as we rock back onto the toes, if the knees are wide, if you were in a wide knee child's pose, pivot the knees forward. You can absolutely keep the hands down. We might reach for the toes with the fingers and just untuck the smallest toes. Mine wind up curled under, maybe yours do too. And then turn the heels out to the side. Now, we might find blocks for this, but you're welcome just to tent your fingertips to the floor. So we may press back, so we're hovering the shins, the knees off the ground. And very slowly start to rise up. Fan the toes, root down through the ball mounds of the big toes, the little toes. Let the heels rise, pivot them out, let them lay. Head is heavy, neck is long, put a little bend in the knees, the head may nod. So we're in a forward bend, but it's like a truncated down dog. We're in a mini dog. Head may very gently circle, slacken the jaw. We may put a little bit of bend in the knees and then work those legs possibly closer to straight, pitching the hips backwards. So your palms may be flat on your blocks or flat on the ground. Unlock those knees. If it's very easy for us to lock out the knees, try to put just a little flex in the knees, just a little bend. Let's shift it forward. Consider sliding the blocks from underneath the hands and let the hands do the walking. So we'll let those hands gradually walk forward into a down face dog position. Finding the spot that feels right for you, maybe pedaling the feet. Perhaps a little shift of the hips side to side. And let's roll on forward towards a high plank position. Maybe we find that rocking motion through the feet, the ankles, the knees could land. And let's gently come all the way down onto the belly, rising up into Sphinx. So we may have our elbows right under the shoulders, and we may give ourselves just a little side bend over to the right, chin to the right. We may bend that left knee. Left toe tips may point up, releasing. Find center, chin moving over to the left. Maybe we bend the right knee, right toe tips rising. We might find just a little motion. Let's bring it back to center, plant the hands, heart rising, cobra. Roll it back towards child's pose. Feel free to cushion the knees. Let's slide that right foot back, raise the right leg, take the knee out to the right and start to pull the knee up towards that right arm, right shoulder. We may step the hand forward. We might grab a couple of blocks, put them underneath the hands. We have longer arms. Now the back knee could be padded. You might tuck the back toes and ratchet that back knee further back. Maybe your hips are saying, we're good right where we are. And we may tuck the back toes, lift that back knee up, and think about tap stepping that back foot forward. Take as many steps as needed, bringing left foot forward, looking out, exhaling, chest to thighs. Put a little bit of bend in the knees, circle the arms all the way up. Exhale, thumbs to forehead, thumbs to heart. Spinning palms forward. Inhale, the arms reach high. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, heart rising. Let's walk the feet back, finding that down face dog position. Tipping sits bones back and high, pivoting heels out, thighs rising, gliding forward into high plank. And again, the knees may land, or we might challenge ourselves, buckle the fingerprints. Stay up a little bit higher. And gradually all the way down to the belly. Let's open up into Sphinx and let the right knee bend out to the right. We might walk the elbows over towards right knee, chin maybe moving a little more right. Left toes may tuck, press back through the heel, left knee may rise. We can always release that if that's a little more than we want right now. Let's slide, right leg long as we find center, lift the heart. Let that left knee bend out to the left. We may walk the elbows more left, chin to the left. Breathing into right side body. We may be bending the right knee, tucking right toes, and letting the right knee rise. Pitch back through that right heel. Just a possibility. Maybe that's a lot more than we want in the front of the hip at this moment. Let's bring it back to center, sliding left leg long, hands reach back, heart rising, moving hips back towards heels. Hug the belly muscles in. We might tent up onto the fingers, finding a cat pose, release the palms. Make sure you've got room to extend that left leg back. Check your blocks. We might be using those in a moment. Left knee rises. Draw that left knee towards the left shoulder, left upper arm, stepping the foot perhaps between the hands, or just move that left hand outside left foot on the blocks if you like. Again, back knee might stay where it is. We might tuck the toes, ratchet the leg a little further back. Tucking the toes, lifting that back knee off the ground. Take as many steps as needed. Walk the hands forward as needed to navigate right foot forward, looking out. Exhale, chest towards thighs. Perhaps we're giving the head a little nod, a little circle. Toes fanning. Sink the hips. Circle the arms all the way up. Exhale, thumbs to brow, thumbs to heart. Spinning palms forward. Inhale, circle the arms high. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, find a little bit of length. Let's keep the right foot forward, navigate the left leg back. So we have the option to put that back knee down. We may keep it elevated. We might spin our props a little higher and move the hands up onto the thigh, maybe hands onto the hips. We might put a little bend in that back knee without the knee touching down. So we might find that hover point. Perhaps we reach both arms up in the air. Or maybe we work that back leg closer to straight as we bend the elbows. Let the hands find the blocks or the ground. We might tap step the left foot in just a little closer to the right. Working both legs gradually closer to straight. Dropping more weight into the back little toe side of the foot. Left little toe side of the foot. Spinning left inner thigh back and wide. Toes fanning. We might find ourselves spilling a little bit more into that forward fold over the right leg. Let's bend back into that right knee. Now, if our stance feels too short, we can always wiggle the left foot further back. Let the hands walk up the thigh. Hands may find the hips. The arms may rise, finding warrior one, Virabhadrasana 1. And the elbows may start to bend, moving a little closer to one another behind the back. Let the arms rise. And draw the elbows down. Let the arms rise. Draw the elbows down, maybe bringing the second favorite thumb on top, weaving the fingers together and extending the bound arms. Right ribs may slide inside right thigh, bound arms moving overhead, rolling right hip back, leaning left hip, left thigh wide to the left. Let the elbows bend. Let the palms land. Peel that left heel up. We may need to wiggle that left heel further away. Peel the right heel up. For fun, we might float that right shin and step it back. Down, face down. We may step the left foot a little closer to the right. And let the right leg rise for a three-legged dog, perhaps bending the knee. Pull that knee back in towards the chest. Right foot steps forward, left leg rises. Bending that left knee, drawing it towards the left shoulder, the left upper arm, and then cycle the left knee in alongside the right. Let the left foot land. Sink the hips, bend the knees, circle the arms up. Exhale, forward fold. We may have hands on blocks. Inhale, heart rising. Right leg steps back. We might spin those blocks up to their tallest setting. We may climb the hands up the thigh, hands to the hips. Did we bend the back knee on the other side? Maybe we're bending that back knee towards 90 degrees for more fun. You can always choose just to put the knee down on the ground. The arms may rise. And let the elbows bend. Back leg starts to work closer to straight as we land the hands. Front leg extending, front toes fanning. Maybe we need to step the right foot in a little bit and pivot the heel to the left. Fan right toes, land weight and little toe side of right foot. Spin that right inner thigh back and wide. We may lower our props. We might fold in a little bit deeper. Maybe just a very gentle nod of the head. Continue to slacken the jaw, find the breath. Let's begin to bend back into the left knee. And maybe we need to wiggle the right foot a little further back, maybe a little wider. Hands, we might use the blocks to bring the hands up gradually to the thigh, to the hips. The arms may rise, full warrior one. The elbows bending. The arms extending. Exhale, bending. Inhale, arms rising. Let's bring the elbows down, weave the fingers together. Maybe we swap across the thumbs again. The arms may glide back. The left ribs may glide inside left leg. Bound arms perhaps overhead. Lean that right hip, right leg out to the right. Bend the elbows. Let the hands return to the ground. Muckle the fingerprints. Wiggle that right heel to point up. Maybe we peel the left heel up and slide that left foot back, hovering on one leg. The hips may rise. We can walk it back, finding down face dog. Lengthen the neck, little hinge at the knees, at the ankles. We may slide the right foot in. Let that left leg rise up in the air. Perhaps the right heel is down. Perhaps the left knee is bending. Pull that left knee into the chest. Step the left foot forward between the hands. We may find our blocks. Right leg rises. Right knee pulls in towards that upper arm. And then cycle the knee in towards left knee. And with control, let that right foot land alongside the left. Sink the hips, bend the knees. Hug an imaginary block with the inner thighs at the same time. Press the outer hips wide. Cycle the arms up. Let's root to rise. Come all the way up to stand. Let the body breathe. Let's open out wide stance towards a long edge of the mat. I'm going to mirror facing this direction. So find your right foot and pivot your right foot towards a short edge of the mat. And we'll go for a knee bend, just the right leg, and re-extend. Check in with the hips, bending, extending. Come down to a depth that feels sustainable for a few rounds of breath. The arms may open out to a T. Chin may rotate over towards the right. And then that back hand, left hand may sweep to the right palm up. Right arm might sweep to the left palm down, moving the arms in opposite directions. Roll that right knee back, the gaze may rise. Straighten the leg, cycle the arms overhead. Lunging back down towards warrior two, right forearm to thigh, left hand to the hip, the shoulder may be straight up. We may heel toe that back foot in just a little. Find the block under that right hand, extending the right leg into triangle. It may feel nice to sweep the top arm overhead. The arm could stay straight. We might find a little elbow bend. Let's consider bending back into the right knee. Heeling the back heel up and cycling that top arm down to the ground. So we might slide that right heel back up. So we're back in that one-legged plank. Stepping back into down face dog. We're going to add on a little piece before we do the other side. Consider rolling forward towards high plank, and maybe we drop onto our elbows, get off those wrists completely. We may hold that forearm plank position, chin tucking in towards chest. We may land the knees, point the feet, slide on forward into a sphinx. We might need to wobble, rock those elbows a little further forward. Glide the hands back, let the heart rise. Hips slide back towards the heels, but this will be a transition. Slide the hands back so we're back in our kneeling seat. And then move forward just a little bit. The hands may walk behind the back and come to the ground, rolling the shoulders back. We could stick with this, we could put our hands on blocks. Maybe we prefer to be on knuckles. The hips may rise, the heart may rise, the head may drop back. Let the hips move back down towards the heels. Hips stack over knees, weight shifts left. Hip hike that right hip. Let that right hip rise, step right foot forward. Tap down, step into that front foot. The right foot, press down, rise all the way up to stand. Shift out anything that needs it. Let's open up wide stance. So second side, this is probably your left foot, spin it towards the short edge of the mat. And we'll just say hello knee, hello hip, bending, extending, fan the toes. We'll land and open the arms out to the T, chin to the left. And maybe that knee's rolling in. Just give it a little reminder, move to the left. The right palm face up may sweep towards left knee. Left palm face down may sweep towards the back knee, the straight leg knee. Maybe the chin's going underneath that left upper arm. And let's rise up, straighten the leg, let the arms rise. We'll sink back down towards warrior two. Left hand or forearm to the thigh, right hand may find the hip. Now we may want to find a block underneath that left hand as we extend the left leg. Feel free to reach the right arm up towards that T shape. Chin down to the middle or all the way up to the ceiling. Top arm may sweep alongside the ear so the palm is facing the ground, with or without elbow bend. Let's begin to cycle that top hand to the ground. We're bending that left knee. We're pivoting the right heel up. Both hands plant. Heel the left heel up and pull that left shin in. So we're finding that one-legged plank, we're holding for fun. You can always put both feet down or a knee down. Step it back, down, face, dog. Now perhaps we peel the heels up and land on the knees. Consider holding on to opposite elbows, put the elbows down, weave the fingers together, tuck the toes. So instead of forearm plank, we're lifting the hips back up for dolphin pose. Just a possibility. And let the heels rise, let the knees land, point the feet. We'll slide the hands back. Now, as we did before, maybe we're bringing the hands or the knuckles behind the back. Your hands could be on blocks. The hips may lift away from the heels. The heart may rise. The head may drop back. Please feel free to keep the chin tucked into the chest. Let the hips sit back towards the heels. We're sliding the hands forward. We'll find that kneeling position. You can always have padding underneath the shins, under the knees as needed. Shift the weight to the right. So we're hip hiking. Pull that left hip up. We're challenging the balance. We're finding that hover position, eventually stepping that left foot forward. We may need to slide the foot back a little bit so that we can stand down into the foot and rise all the way up to stand. Shift out anything that needs it. And let's step back out, wide stance towards the long edge of the mat. Hands to the hips, big toes pivot in just a little. Heart may rise. Tipping forward, rolling forward, bend the knees as much as needed. Hands may come to the ground. Perhaps we're walking the heels of the hands back towards heels of the feet. We may peel the heels of the palms off the ground for a little more stretch in the forearms. Let's walk those hands forward. And as we do, we might bring that left hand a little further forward. Shift the weight into the left hand so that the right hand can glide onto right hip. And the right arm may rise. We might decide to wrap that right arm behind the back, flexing the hand around left side body or binding left thigh. Unwind the twist, replace the left hand with the right. We might put a little bend in that left knee as we glide the left hip higher. Left hand to left hip, maybe straightening left leg, maybe extending left arm. The arm may wrap behind the back, flexing around side body or binding the opposite thigh. And let's gradually unwind. Let that hand come down. Walk the feet back towards the heels. Heel, toe, the feet in. Let's put a little bend in the knees, forearms to thighs. Take your time to rise up to stand. Shift out anything that needs it. So let's go for a classic tree pose. Feel free to use a wall if you like. Maybe find an even spot on your floor. Heel, right heel up. And let's pivot the knee out to the side. Now maybe we fold it in a little, maybe we open it a little more. We might elevate the foot. We may reach down and lift the leg really high. Now, if we always do our pose at one height, let's try something a little different. So if you always go as high as you can, maybe hold it a little lower today. Hands on the hips, gaze on a spot that won't move. We might take those arms back to a T, roll the shoulders back. The arms may rise, the gaze may rise. Now, perhaps our tree becomes a side bending tree. Right hand to the hip. We may tip it over to the right. We might slide that right hand down the thigh. And let's gradually rise back up. And sometimes we fall out of our tree. And eventually we'll just release wherever we are. And we'll trade sides. So we'll roll left heel up. Pivot the knee out to the side. And we'll try to reproduce the same height that we brought the foot to on the previous side. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We might find that T position with the arms, roll the shoulders back, arms rising. Maybe the gaze following the fingers up to the ceiling. And perhaps we release that left hand down to the hip, starting to side bend our tree to the left. We might slide the back of the hand down the leg, palm face up. And we might lose our tree. So we're always using an inanimate object as our focal point because I will definitely lose my balance too. And we'll gradually retrace our steps more or less if it's available today. Extend, rebend, release, shift it out. So let's come back up to the top edge of the mat. Big toes may touch. Knees may touch, sink the hips, bend the knees, circle the arms high, tuck the ribs back. Find that forward fold. Let's walk on back towards down dog, but transition back down to kneeling and mer person style. Just swing your hips to one side so that you can bring your legs forward. And let's reach out through the heels. Maybe we give a little rock on the sits bones. Inviting the toes back towards the hips, towards the knees, maybe knuckles outside the hips. Maybe if we're feeling a little tighter in the back or hips, we might walk the hands further back. If we're feeling wide open and we want a little more, we may be walking the hands forward. Feel free to grab some props and support the ground. support the neck. So we may be holding on to the feet. The hands may just land on the legs or the ground. And let's gradually walk those hands back up. As we bring the hands in, we'll transition our blocks, our props off to the side, bending the knees. So listen to your wrists. Again, we may have hands on the ground. We can stay low. We can keep the legs straightened back. Or with knees bent, we might elevate the hips, chin to chest. Watch out for anything behind you if you're dropping your head back. We may rock forward, healing the heels up. Be very mindful of shoulders, elbows, wrists. So we might just find that little forward and back rocking motion. Maybe not. Always accurate self-assessment. Let's release the hips back down to the ground. And we'll give ourselves just a little wrist care. So we might encircle self-massage one wrist, one forearm. We might traction the wrist, so elbow goes one way as you draw the wrist the other way. Trading sides. And then just release that, let that go. We'll come back to our seat, slide that right foot up for a Janu Sirsasana position. So it's kind of like our tree, but we're going up as high as we can now. Check in with the low back. If your low back is more sensitive, you might want a couple of props between the knees, perhaps tipping in. Again, if you're feeling pretty wide open in that back body, maybe you're squaring the shoulders over the left leg and tipping in. Feel free to support the forehead. It brings more ease to the neck. Invite that ease into the jaw. Let's gradually start to bring the shoulders back up over the hips. And as we do, the right arm may rise. We may rotate, twist to the right, letting the right fingertips come down. Give yourself a moment and we can absolutely just enjoy the twist. We may decide it's fun to slide that right hand out on the diagonal. Let that left hip elevate so the left heel can slide a little more in. And then we may press down into that right shin, rising up, sweeping that top arm up alongside top ear. And gradually coming back down to the ground. So trading sides, we'll invite the left leg in, right leg long. Navigate the sits bones back. Right toes point up and we can stay upright. We might fold a little forward between the knees, maybe hands or forearms on props. Maybe we're folding a lot forward over that right leg. We'll gradually bring the shoulders back up over hips and we'll think about twisting over to the left. So it might just be that we're sliding the left hand outside or behind the left hip. Right hand might come all the way around to that left knee. It doesn't have to. You could stay on right leg or find a spot in the middle. And we can certainly stick with that twist, that rotation. We might be sliding that left hand further back on the diagonal and letting that right hip rise and slide. We may press down into the left shin, cycling right arm up and overhead, palm down, forward or up to the ceiling. And gradually releasing. coming all the way back down to the ground. Let's slide both legs in. So we may find a cross-legged seat, one shin in front of the other. We may bring one foot on top of the other. Feel free to plug a couple of props in underneath the thighs, under the hips, that might be supportive. You might go for a forward bend, maybe hands on the ground. We can spin the cross lower, maybe forearms on the ground. And again, we may be finding that brow support. Breathing into the mid-back. Breathing into that top leg thigh, top leg hip. And let's gradually rise on up. And we may lean back and just reverse the cross of the legs. So second leg now on top or in front. Again, welcome to add in support. And maybe this is perfect. Maybe you keep that support there or not. And start to find a little deeper forward bend. So let's take our time to rise back up. We may be walking the hands behind the back, extending each leg, and then bringing the feet back down to the ground. So fingertips planted behind the back, we might float each foot off the ground, and just notice with a lot of rounding, I'm super exaggerating it in the back. See if we can think about those sits bones we were feeling on our blocks earlier. Try to rock forward and find a balance point on the sits bones. Maybe we don't lift the leg as high, or maybe we just lift one leg at a time. We might keep fingers or knuckles down. Maybe we find a balance where the hands rise. The hands could support behind the legs, the arms may move forward, the knees may widen, and the arms might come between the knees. And then consider placing right ankle on top of left. Hug the knees in, let the feet drop. Give yourself a moment. And depending on how much challenge you might enjoy today, your hands could come to the floor. Blocks are a little more gratifying, but if you have the squishy marshmallow style block, not so fun usually. These are very firm blocks. So you might place your hands on books or blocks or the ground. Press down, keep the shoulders low and let the hips rise. Then the heels may rise and perhaps the toes rise. And then we release back down. Bring the toes forward. We'll think about that balance on the sits bones. The legs may rise. Maybe we're supporting behind the leg. Maybe we extend the arms. Maybe we extend the legs. Maybe we start to sink down a little bit. Lower, lower, lower. We might find a hover point. Try not to go to the point of no return. It's so much easier to get up when you bend your knees. You might have to give the knees a little assist, especially if you came super low. Left ankle over right. Let the feet drop. And we can just stay here and breathe. Maybe we grab those props. Lift the hips. Try the heels. Try the toes. Maybe we get a little sway. And release on down. So let's consider one more time. Feet forward. Balance on sits bones. We can keep the feet down. We don't have to pick them up. You could. We might keep the feet down and lower, lower, lower. Maybe we lift the legs and slowly lower, lower, lower. We're not going to worry about coming back up this time. We'll come all the way down to the ground. Make sure you're not going to run into anything over your head. So if you're really close to furniture or a wall, scoot forward, so that you can reach your arms fully overhead. Now, depending on your low back, maybe your legs are fully extended. Maybe it feels nicer for your low back to keep the knees bent, reaching up through the arms. Acclimating to breathing on back body. And then let's bend the knees if they're not bent. Hug both knees into the chest. Start to give yourself a little rock. side to side. Let's land the feet. Find robot arms, elbows alongside the ribs. Toes fanning, hips start to curl up. Reach forward through the knees. Maybe the fingertips point at the heels, palms facing down. Let the hips gradually release back down. Give yourself a moment to breathe. And let's consider repeating. So we may press down into those elbows, let the hips rise up, reaching forward through the knees gently hugging in. They're not touching. We're just not letting them open wide. And then exhale, releasing down. One final round, we may lift the hips. We might decide to point the fingertips at the shoulders. Now this can be a lot in the wrist, so that might be plenty. You might decide to press into the hands, lift onto the crown of your head, rolling towards your eyebrows until you feel inspired to break contact between your head and the floor. And you may not feel so inspired. When you're ready to come down, tuck the chin and very carefully roll back down to the ground. Let's slide the right foot a little further forward, rock the left leg in. We might let that right leg fully extend. We might give that left leg a little bounce. Let's slide the right leg in, release left foot to the ground. Maybe we're sliding that left leg long. And we may give the leg a little bounce, a little jostle. Let's release the right foot to the ground, knee is bent. Slide the left foot in, knee is bent. Reach up, find a block or a blanket, something that will give you some elevation. Let the hips rise and let them be supported by your prop. Let's rock both knees into the chest. We may dust off the feet. Feel free to use a wall. Feel free just to use a chair seat. So we may be reaching the legs up towards the ceiling. Eyes resting softly closed. Taking 8 to 10 full breath cycles. After that final breath cycle, letting the knees slowly bend. Noticing the sensations through the toes, the feet, the ankles, the lower legs. Letting the soles of the feet release to the ground. We may reach the hands down, cover the hips, glide the hips to the left and return them to the floor. Sweep the knees in, letting the knees roll over towards the right. We might press into that right elbow, scooch the right shoulder a little more right. The arms may open out to a T. Sweeping the knees back into the chest, let the feet touch down, the hips may rise, moving the hips over to the right. Sweep the knees in, knees falling left. Maybe we press into the left elbow, scooch the left shoulder a little more left. Lengthening side bodies, back bodies with each inhalation. Softening with each exhalation. Gently returning to center, touch the feet down, level the hips. We may slide each leg long. Perhaps we give the legs a rock. We may sweep the arms in alongside the hips. We may give the head a little wobble rock and letting everything rest at center. Finding ease for these next few moments. Resting here as long as you like. The breath may deepen. We may be returning movement to fingers, to toes, bending elbows, circling wrists. We may press down through the heels, reach up through the arms, and exhale, let it go. Sliding the feet in, letting the knees bend, rocking the knees into the chest, tipping to rest on one side. There is no hurry, top palm grounded. As you feel ready, supporting yourself to a seat. So let it be a seat that works for your body in this moment. We may be rubbing the hands together. An option to cup the hands over the eyes with contact or just hover the hands, no contact. Full inhale. Letting it go. Rubbing the hands together, placing a hand to the belly, a hand over the heart. Full inhale. And releasing. Sealing our practice with vibrational sound. Deep inhale through the nose. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this practice. Let me know if you have any questions.